They say the wind howling through the trees of the northern forests is not just the voice of nature, but the cry of something ancient, something hungry, a creature that walks on two legs yet is no longer human. Tonight, we follow the scent of blood into the frozen wilderness and confront the terrifying legend of the Wendigo. Welcome to Myths After Midnight. The Wendigo is a myth deeply rooted in the traditions of several indigenous peoples of North America, especially among the Algonquian-speaking tribes such as the Ojibwe, Cree, and Innu. Though details vary, the core of the legend remains chillingly consistent. A human being, driven by desperation and hunger, usually through cannibalism, transforms into a monstrous, insatiable being. The name Wendigo is believed to come from the Ojibwe word Wendigo, which refers to a malevolent spirit of winter, famine, and unrelenting greed. In some tellings, the Wendigo is a spirit that possesses people. In others, it is what remains after the transformation, once someone has crossed the ultimate line. In some oral traditions, the Wendigo was once a powerful warrior who made a pact with a dark force to save his people in battle. But when the war ended, his hunger did not. He wandered into the woods, consumed by a need for flesh. He became the story whispered to warn others and to frighten children. The myth served a powerful social purpose. It warned of selfishness, gluttony, betrayal. In times of scarcity, when communities had to rely on one another to survive, the Wendigo was a cautionary tale. If you take too much, if you think only of yourself, something worse than death awaits you. Among the Innu, the creature is sometimes called Wendigo. In some stories, it's a shaman who broke sacred laws. In others, it's a stranger who never learned the value of sharing. But always, the Wendigo is the one who gave in. And in doing so, became something else. Descriptions of the Wendigo are terrifying and deeply symbolic. Some say it is gaunt and skeletal, with skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes are sunken, its lips chewed or gone entirely. Others describe a towering beast with a deer's skull for a head, antlers jutting from its crown, and breath that turns the air to frost. It's said to smell of death, to mimic the voices of loved ones calling from just beyond the tree line. But in all versions, one thing is always true. The Wendigo is forever hungry. It devours flesh, but it is never full. The more it eats, the larger it grows, stretching impossibly thin and tall, so that it can never be satisfied. One Cree tale tells of a hunting party trapped in a blizzard. One of them vanished. Days later, the others were found, half consumed. The missing man was never seen again, but people still whisper of a thin shadow that watches from the trees near that place. Another legend tells of a man who returned from the woods, changed. He looked the same, but his breath smoked in spring air. He would not eat with the others. And one night, he walked back into the forest. They say the Wendigo had borrowed his skin. The Wendigo was not confined to legend alone. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, fur traders and missionaries in Canada documented what they believed to be real encounters with Wendigos. In the Journal of Reverend John M. Cooper, a Jesuit missionary working in northern Ontario in the 1920s, we find chilling entries. One passage reads, "The people speak in whispers of a man who returned from the bush, changed. They say his eyes no longer moved, only stared. The dogs would not go near him." In another source, a Hudson's Bay Company trader recorded a community's decision to exile a man believed to be a Wendigo in human form. They say he hears whispers in the frost and no longer sleeps. The council has decided he must leave. In 1907, an anthropologist named Frank G. Speck recorded the oral histories of Algonquin elders in Quebec. They described ceremonies held to detect and purge Wendigo spirits, often involving drumming, chants, and the symbolic burning of food. According to one elder, you must feed the fire with what you would not share. The Wendigo hates generosity. But perhaps the most disturbing example is a case so infamous, it deserves its own place in this episode: Swift Runner. We'll return to him later. At its core, the Wendigo is a psychological horror. It's not only about fear of monsters, but fear of what we might become. In medical literature from the early 1900s, doctors in remote Canadian outposts recorded disturbing cases of what they called Wendigo psychosis. One Cree woman, isolated for weeks during a harsh winter, began refusing all food. She whispered that eating would awaken something inside her. When they forced her to eat soup, she screamed. That night, she vanished into the woods. Only her necklace was found. Another case in 1921 involved a man named Joseph LaBelle who returned to his village claiming he could smell blood in the snow. He begged to be locked away, claiming the Wendigo lived inside him. He starved himself to death, saying, "It won't leave if I'm fed." Whether real or psychological, the myth infects the mind. It turns hunger into fear, and fear into madness. It is a monster that doesn't hide in shadows. It hides in your thoughts. In isolation, in desperation, the Wendigo waits. Modern sightings continue to surface, strange, fleeting, always half-believed. In 2005, a snowmobiler in British Columbia discovered tracks, long, inhuman, with clawed impressions. They followed no known pattern and led to a clearing filled with the smell of sulfur and charred bones. Authorities blamed a bear. Locals didn't. A former park ranger from Michigan anonymously submitted a report in 2016. "It followed me for hours. I never saw it, but I heard breathing, close and low, just behind the trees. When I turned back toward my snowmobile, my boot prints were gone. Something else had stepped in them." Pop culture often simplifies the Wendigo into a generic beast. But to many, these portrayals miss the point. The true horror is not just in what the Wendigo does, but in what it means. It is a spirit of imbalance, a curse of endless hunger. a reflection of what happens when you abandon humanity. Rituals to protect against the Wendigo are older than memory. In many tribes, it was believed that generosity was sacred armor. Those who gave food in times of hunger, those who told stories on the coldest nights, these were protected. Among the Anishinaabe, cedar and sweetgrass were burned to purify the home. Elders spoke prayers in a trembling cadence, invoking ancestral spirits to ward off the hunger. In a chilling tale from 1884, a healer fasted for 7 days after sensing a Wendigo near her camp. She said, "If I eat, it finds me. But if I offer my hunger to the fire, it cannot enter." Her tent was surrounded in ashes and bone charms. None who slept inside were ever harmed. These rituals are not simply superstition. They are cultural antibodies designed to remind a person who they are, to bind them to their people. Because the Wendigo doesn't only devour flesh, it devours connection. And once you are alone, it knows you are ready. Swift Runner was a Cree man living near what is now Edmonton, Alberta. He was known as a capable guide and hunter, even serving briefly with the Northwest Mounted Police. But that winter, something went terribly wrong. When the ice thawed and the snows melted, Swift Runner emerged from the wilderness alone. His wife, children, mother, and brother, 8 people in total, had vanished. He claimed they had starved to death. At first, people believed him. That winter had been brutal. But something didn't sit right. Swift Runner looked healthy. Too healthy. Suspicious, the authorities launched an investigation. What they found in the family's winter camp defied belief. Scattered bones, many of them cracked open for marrow. A pot of human fat. Burned remains of flesh. He confessed. Not only had he killed his family, he had eaten them. When asked why, Swift Runner said he had been possessed. The Wendigo had taken hold of him. The case of Swift Runner led to the first official execution in Alberta. But more than that, it became the most infamous real-world echo of the Wendigo myth. In the winter of 1860, a French fur trapper known only as Benoit kept a leather-bound log of his travels through the woods of what is now Saskatchewan. One page, smeared and frantic, reads, "Snow came too early. Pierre is gone. At night I see movement beyond the firelight. It is not animal. It waits. It listens." Days later, the journal ends. Benoit was never seen again. In 1913, a group of settlers in northern Manitoba abandoned their village after a string of unexplained events. Livestock mutilated. Children sleepwalking into the woods. A local priest claimed the forest was cursed. A hunter who stayed behind was later found, frozen to death in his own cabin. Door bolted from the inside, and deep scratches on the walls as though something had tried to escape from within. One of the most mysterious cases is the so-called Weeping Woods letter. Discovered in the floorboards of a collapsed cabin near Rainy Lake, Ontario. It read, "Do not follow the crying. It wears her face, but it is not her. The cold is its breath. If you hear her voice, you are already too close. Burn this letter. Pray you are not next. Local lore tells of a man who returned to his village after a month lost in the wild. He no longer spoke, only stared. The elders called a cleansing ritual. When his throat finally opened, he whispered, "I was not alone. It walked in me." Anthropologists often dismiss these accounts as hysteria or isolation psychosis. But what if the legend persists not because of fantasy, but because of patterns too disturbing to ignore? There is something in the frost, in the hunger, in the silence of deep snow that muffles even screams. And those who have heard the Wendigo's voice say it does not growl, it whispers. The Wendigo has haunted the forests of North America for centuries. But perhaps its most terrifying quality is not its claws, nor its hunger, but its relevance. It adapts. It evolves. In an age of abundance, it is still a tale of greed. In a world of hyperconnection, it remains a symbol of isolation. And in a society of endless consumption, it warns us, more is never enough. A contemporary Algonquin elder once said, "The Wendigo doesn't always walk in the woods. Sometimes, it walks in men in suits." It is the hunger that drives destruction of land, of community, of self. Why does this myth endure? Because it feels close. Too close. In 1992, a man in the northern Yukon was rescued after being lost for 5 days in the snow. He was disoriented, dehydrated, and hypothermic. As they carried him away, he murmured, "I didn't eat. I almost did. It was watching." He never spoke of it again. Myths survive because they speak to a truth that facts alone cannot explain. The Wendigo is not just an old legend whispered by firelight. It's a reminder, one that chills the spine and stirs something ancient within us. That there is a line. And once crossed, we may never come back. So, the next time you walk beneath snow-laden pines, and the wind whistles like a dying voice, ask yourself, is it just the cold? Or is something watching you? Starving? Waiting to consume more than just your flesh? The Wendigo is more than a legend. It's a warning. And warnings should never be ignored. This has been Myths After Midnight. Until next time, stay warm. And stay human.